今天给大家带来时尚多圈手环。
So we're going to be making a collection of beaded beads, pretty beaded beads, long oval beaded beads. They're all starting out with 4 units of right angle weave. And I'm going to show you how to do the basic one and then how we basically extend from the inside out. Do they have to be 4 units? No, they can be more than that or even less than that if you want to do 3. I'm going to show you the most traditional way, which is nothing new, how we're going in and creating our first little beaded bead here, which all of my sets that we're going to be doing are a grouping of 4. We're going to be using an 8mm bead as well as a 4mm bead, and we're going to put an 11/0 bead on either side of our 4mm. Our pattern is going to start with our right angle weave having black larger 8mm beads that are going to be on these sides, and then these 11/0 and 4mm beads on the top and bottom. I have a pattern here on my thread and needle of the 8 along with the 11s with the 4mm in the middle, another 8, the 11s with a 4mm in the middle. From here, you can use a stop bead if you want to. I'm just going to tie it into basically a loop, or tie it into my first right angle unit. I'm tying it here, making sure that there's no thread looping over a bead by accident, and just doing a nice tight pull. So like I said here, this is my first right angle unit. I have the bottom of my unit and the top of my unit, which are the seed beads and the pearls, and then the left and the right of the unit. From here, to get away from that knot, I'm going to go up through the bottom there. Since I rotated it, was the top, now it's the bottom, and out through the bead that sits on the right hand side. Every time you're doing right angle weave, to continue, you're going to go and come and bring your thread out the right hand side of the last unit or the last little right angle weave box that you made. We're going to put on a new top to do our second unit, which again is that 11 4mm pearl 11/0 seed bead. Now we need a new right side of our box, and then we need a new bottom of our box. Again, 11 4 11. We're going to sew into the opposite side of the bead that our thread is currently coming out of. So the thread's coming out the top. We've added those collections of our 3 new sides, and we're going back through the bead the thread is coming out, but from the opposite direction. So we're coming into the bottom, and our needle is coming out the top. I have a lot of thread here. All right. From here, we're going to once again get our thread and needle to come out through the right hand side. I'm going to go through the top of my box, which is that 11 pearl 11, and then bring my needle and thread out the right hand most side of the box that I just completed, right there. From here, I want to do a third box. So here's my first, my second, and I want to do a third one. I'm going to need to put on an 11 pearl 11 combo, because that's what I'm using again for the bottom of the box. You need to put on a 4th 8mm bead for the right of the box. And now for the top of the box, I need to put on the 11, my next pearl, which sometimes they can be tricky because pearls have tails, and then the 11. Again, the thread's coming out the bottom of that bead, so I'm going to go into the top of that bead and bring my needle towards where the thread is coming out of. That rounds that out and creates my third and final unit that is going to sit on the straight. I'm going through the beads at the bottom of the right angle unit, and once again, just like we've been doing, coming out the rightmost bead. Now I could keep going if I want to make this into a bracelet, but what we're going to do is round it out in order to create our bead. So we're turning this flat 3 groupings of right angle unit into a bead that we're going to sew through using some memory wire, and when we put them all together. So to make it into that rounded bead, what we are going to do is we are going to do one more right angle unit. We're going to use this bead here, which is the rightmost bead from unit number 3, and that's going to be our new left bead, just like it's been going on and we've been doing. Our new right side bead is going to be bead number 1 of that 8mm bead. So we're going to do a new top to our right angle weave box. going through and putting our 11-0, our pearl on our 11-0 on our thread and needle. The thread is currently coming out of the last 8mm bead. We're going to sew down into the first 8mm bead. And I'm not going to pull this tight. Normally I would, but I'm going to wait so you can see the effect of it. And we're going to create our bottom of our 4th right angle unit, which connects unit number 3 to unit number 1. We're going to sew now back up through the opposite side of where our thread is currently coming out of. Now I want those to dangle at the top and the bottom just so you can see the effect that it's going to have as we go in and we pull tight, and that brings the sides together and rounds it out for our beaded bead. From here, we're going to decorate the beaded bead, going with some crosses and X's in front of our bead. And then I'll show you how we're going to strengthen up the side so that way it doesn't have as much movement. So now we're going to decorate around the black bead, putting a pearl and some seed beads in between. What you're going to add to your thread and needle really can depend on whatever makes it from one side of the bead to the other, so you can change up your pattern at any time. I have 2 11-0s, 1 15, 1 3mm pearl, switching out to a little bit smaller, 1 15, and 2 11-0s. Coming out the bottom right of that 8mm bead, I'm going to go in to the top left of the bead that sits right above. What that's going to do is bring this over into a diagonal. I'm going to continue to do so the whole way. You can see that I cheated here and did, well, I didn't cheat, I worked ahead and did those ahead of time. So you go the whole way around, adding in 2 11s, 15, 3mm pearl, 15, 2 11s up to the next one. Do the same thing here, and you're just crossing along the top. What we're going to do now after you do all 4 gaps in between is we're going to reverse the thread. I switch it in my hand like this. So see how I just went and I rotated the bead? Because what we're going to do is go the opposite way now. We're going to add 1 and 2 11-0 seed beads, one of our 15s, and we're going to cross through the 3mm pearl that is already there. Pull nice and tight there for that first one especially. Grab a 15, 2 11s, and then we're going to sew into the right side of the next 8mm bead that sits at the top. So you can see what happens is after we spin around and add the diagonal going one way, we reverse the thread and we share the pearl in the middle to get that Xing effect. So again, 2 11s, followed by 1 15. We're going to share the pearl that's already there from our last time we went around the beads and added it in. Then we're going to do another 15. And I need some more 11s here. We're going to mimic and do 2 more 11s and sew back up through the 8mm bead on the right hand side towards the left. And you can see how that creates that nice crisscross effect right in the middle of the bead. You're going to do that the whole way around so you get this crisscrossing effect the whole way through all the beads, and then we're going to come back and just tighten up the sides. So I have 2 of my X's done, and I need to go up now and do 2 more X's attaching to the diagonal lines that we've already created. Once you're finished crossing over your X's, we're going to tighten up this side because it'll still move a little bit. And to do so, you don't have to add anything. You can just sew right around that collection of your beads that you made. What I'm going to do is actually add a bead in between. So I'm coming out of my last 8-0 seed bead, and I'm going to sew into the 11-0 and then into the next pearl. From here, I'm going to sew through the 11-0 after the pearl. And you can sew directly into the next side. I'm going to add a 15-0 just for a little stability, cover up some thread, and then into the next top, basically, of your original right angle unit, into that 11, pearl 11. Add a 15 into the next, pearl 11, pearl. And you can see I'm just adding a 15 between each of my lines. Now, once I do this, I'm going to make sure to do it on both sides. And then because I know this is the end of my beaded beads, which you could go on and on and on forever, and add to it, add things above, I'm going to go back, and when my thread ends get near one another, I'm just going to tie off my thread ends. Once I have that here, you can see those thread ends are right about the same spot. I've already gone through and did the other side. If you need to get to the other side, you just literally sew through the 8mm seed bead, and then I'll bring you off to the opposite side. Get your thread ends together and simply tie it into a knot. Right over left, rotate it, left over right, switch hands. And then you can take, if you want to, your needle and thread through some other beads so your thread ends separate. I'm not going to worry about it. Just take my thread burner, burn those down, and then burn the thread edges flat against the project. I'm going to keep going then and make a couple different versions of the beaded beads and show you how to create and to do them in all different fashions using 8mm beads, 6mm beads, 4mm beads, as well as 3mm beads, and 8/0, 6/0, and 8/0, 11/0, and 15 size seed beads. So to show you how to do this next style of our beaded bead, I'm starting out the same way where I have the top is just one 3mm bead for each of my right angle units, and the middle is a 6mm bead. I'm about to take unit 3 right here and connect it to unit 1, adding in a new bottom and a new top and sewing back down through the bead that I was coming out of, and that rounds out my piece for me. Now this one, because I didn't use any seed beads, has pretty large opening. We're going to take advantage of that. And I'm going to sew back through one of my bottom beads here. And we're going to add an 8/0 seed bead between each one of my bottom beads, and then go over and add one between each one of my top beads. So an 8/0 gets sewn between each one of your 3mm pearls at the top and between each one of your 3mm pearls at the bottom. After going through one side, you can see I'm going back through the first 8/0 that I added into my second 3mm bead. And here's how I said it's really easy to get from one side to the other when you're working on beaded beads. You just sew through one of your bigger middle beads. Right to the other side. When you come out the other side now, again, go through one of your pearls. And you're going to add the 8/0s between each. You get this little bit of three-dimensional beading. From here, then, we are going to use the 8/0s instead of the pearls in the middle to add our X's to. So again, I'm going back through that first pearl, and I'm going to come out through the first 8 on this second side. Give a nice tight pull and tighten it up. And now you can see on both sides, this is even just as pretty as it is, going through and creating your beaded bead just as this. Now what we're going to do is we are going to make it a little bit longer, and we are going to connect our crisscrossed lines rather than through the pearl to the 8/0 seed beads along the side. So this is going to be 2 of our 11s, 1 of our 15, and then another one of our pearls to sit on the top. So coming out this 8/0 seed bead here, I'm coming out the top of that one on the left, 2 of your 11s, 1 15, 1 pearl, and then downgrading to 1 15, 2 11s, and crisscrossing over to the next 8/0 seed bead and just sewing up through it. From here, again, 2 11s, 1 15, 1 pearl, do the same pattern on the opposite side of the pearl, go to the opposite side and sew up through the 11. What this is going to do is frame out the pearl a little bit more and highlight the beads that are sitting on the side, those black 11/0 or 8/0s. From here, we're going to repeat this pattern. And then just like we did previously, we're going to reverse the thread basically and go the opposite way. Now, because we are sewing through a bead where the holes are going horizontal rather than the vertical, we are going to need to change it up a little bit, and I'll show you how we're going to change our direction. So as we build in this last little diagonal line here, we're through our 8/0 seed bead there, right there along the side. See those diagonals happen. I want you to go through the pearl and out through the next 8/0 seed bead. And now you're ready to do the diagonal from a different direction. So just like we did previously too, you're going to share the pearl that's in the middle, adding 2 11s, 1 15, share the pearl that's already there, just like that. It'll pull that pearl down a little bit tighter. Add a 15 and 2 11s, and then go up through the next open 8 on that same side. Coming out that 8, 2 11s, 1 15, share through the middle pearl there, doing that cross section. Once you're out there, continue the pattern, 1 15, 2 11s, and up through the next 8 OC bead. And you're getting that X version. I've got 2 more to do to create that, and then we're going to pop over to the sides, and we are going to add some more seed beads along the side, making it look a little bit less round and a little bit more oval. Just got 1 more to do here. 2 11s, 1 15, share that pearl in the middle. And when I share the pearl in the middle, I almost always crisscross through that pearl, taking my thread in opposite directions just for a fun look, and it sits nice. Back up through that first 8 seed bead, and you can see now the beads along the sides match. And then if you rotate, you've got an X between each one of your pearls. What we're going to do now is add even more beads. So coming out through that 8 seed bead, we're going to decorate and make this a little bit elongated. Coming out the 8 O's, we're going to add 2 15s, an 11, and 2 15s. So from here, I'm going to turn it, try to get that thread out of the way so you can see it. So again, it's going to be that 2 15, 1 11, and 2 15. Sew into the next 8 seed bead along the side. So I've turned it to the side because I'm working on the side right now. Anything I do to one side, generally speaking, I do the other to make my beaded bead match in directions. 2 15s, 1 11, 2 15s, on to the next 8. And what you may not realize is as you're doing this, you're actually doing a netting. So as we go in and we add these beads, we're just creating a netted pattern. Going back through this 8-0 then, I want you to sew to increase it into more of an oval shape. Sew back through the first 2 15s and the first 11 that you added as we were doing this little netting for the side. As we do this, coming out the 11, we're going to add another one of our 3mm pearl. And again, with all of these, the patterns can be really fun, diverse, and you can change it up as you go. You're going to add another 3mm pearl now between each of those center 11 OC beads that we added. So we added 2 15s, 1 11, 2 15s. We're now, as we go and we build it more into that oval shape, going and adding one more 3mm bead between just the 11 OC beads that you added on that last row and round. Going in here, you're adding a pearl into the next 11-0, and because we used 4 as our base, we're always doing everything 4 times. Add your last pearl, out through, give a nice tight pull, and then what we are going to do is circle through one more time, pulling that in and making it a little bit tight. The final thing that we're going to do is just add 2 15 OC beads between each one of, add 1 15 if you want, between each one of those singular 3mm beads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off that side and then sneak through my bead, going through all the bead lines here, getting towards the center to go over to the opposite side. You can see here I'm on one of the diagonal lines. You can take a diagonal line to the opposite side. You can take a bead to the opposite side. It's kind of up to you how you get over there. And now that I'm over here, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the opposite side to get that nice oval beaded bead look. So with the beaded beads, you can really take them and do whatever you want here. This one here, I did a 4mm bead with 11 OC beads in between, grabbed 8 O's after grabbing and doing my X in the middle, popped those between on the sides, and then just grabbed another 3mm bead and added them on the side. This one here went through and just did the traditional bead and then added some extra seed beads, closing it up on the end. This one here, traditional, going through and adding in a 15-0, a pearl, a 15-0 in the 3 with the 4mm in the middle, and then Xing in the middle, doing that crisscross with a black 8-0. There are so many options how you can expand and extend the beaded beads. You can go in and add more on the outer edge, and you can add even into that section on the sides and the tops of that original right angle weave. You can make them longer and bigger by making more than 4 units of the right angle weave and pulling them tighter together and working with them. I love the texture that they give to a project, and we're gonna have some fun stringing this collection of beaded beads onto some memory wire. Once you get all of your beaded beads made, you can put them onto your memory wire. I separated mine out, actually did it twice. I liked this look better, just putting those random beads on. It made them separate out and be seen a lot more by using a long collection of seed beads, using 25 seed beads, and then a 6mm glass pearl followed by the collection of beaded beads that you can wear in your hand. One thing as we get close to holiday time to keep in mind, these work great as being wrapped on candles. You can do one single beaded bead on some beading wire, great little stocking stuffer and a gift. You can also wrap presents and put this around wine bottles too. So if you want to go in and change it up for a different use, you can totally do that. Here at the end, you're going to go in and you can take your pliers if you want to. Just do a little turn whenever you finish the memory wire. You can see I'm turning in towards the project with that memory wire, and then going to bring my wire over the front here of my round nose pliers, kind of cross it over to tighten it up, and then go in with my cutters. Memory wire cutters are recommended, and of course I'm looking around for mine and I don't have them. Careful, that will fly. And then you just close up your loop. I always like to put a bigger bead at the end of the memory wire, so that way you're sure to have it not fall off. You can make tons and tons of different beaded beads. Again, they make great gift. The memory wire is great because you don't need to know the size of somebody's wrists, and that long section of seed beads allows you a nice way for it to have those beaded beads really become the focus of the design.